All right, we'll get started. Thank you everyone for attending. Today we're going to talk about Copilot M365 for the sales trainer. So let's just get started. Today, our speaker today is Jasmine Ho, who's a senior technical specialist, and myself, I'm an account technology strategist in healthcare and life sciences. Also, to give you a little bit of background, I've been with Microsoft for 9 years, and I also have a executive MBA at CISSP and CISM. So I have a kind of broad background when it comes to sales and actually in the healthcare space. One thing, the agenda today, what we're going to talk about is what Copilot is and isn't. Jasmine's going to give a demo of the demo cases with a Copilot and how the sales trainer could use Copilot in their day-to-day. Then we'll do a Q&A about what we just saw and any questions that you have about the presentation today. And then we'll do next steps and resources that you can actually use after the presentation is done. Okay. So you've heard a lot about this probably in the news, but the age of Copilots. Copilots right now is just the AI tools that are designed to assist us in our day-to-day. They make our workflows more efficient and effective. One thing about Copilot, they're not just tools, but they're like collaborative partners. So the word Copilot, as opposed to autopilot, Copilot is something that sits next to us and makes our tasks a lot easier. We can use Copilots for real-time data analysis. They can automate routine tasks, and they can also offer assistance to tailor to our needs within Copilot, within 365 and Copilot. One thing that's really important to know is what Copilot isn't. I just spoke about what Copilot is. One thing that we want to ensure that our audience knows that what Copilot isn't. One thing it doesn't do is replace human judgment. One thing about it's supposed to help us assist us do our day-to-day job. As far as what I do, I use Copilot to automate things to make my life easier. For example, I would use it for if I want to look at meetings or if I want to just try to find out what emails are most important for me today, as opposed to me going through it manually and looking at hundreds of emails. It gives me that information instantaneously. One thing it also doesn't do is handle sensitive and confidential information. So one thing about it, it doesn't manage it. So we have to make sure that sensitive data is secure and that it's going through approved channels. And depending on what industry that you're in, we have to make sure that you follow your company's governance and also industry best practices. Another thing that Copilot does not do is predict features or events with certainty. So one thing about Copilot is not psychic. It can try to look at past trends to find out what possibly could happen, but it's not something that you should it shouldn't be something that I would say is definite, right? There's always some type of variability when it comes to that. But I'll try to give you a good idea what may happen, but it's really best used when it's looking at past events and how things happened in the past to help you plan for the future. And the last thing that it doesn't do, it doesn't execute actions automatically. So when I say that is that you can ask it for a suggestion, and then you have to actually execute it. If you wanted to create your PowerPoint, you have to tell it to create a PowerPoint. It doesn't do all those things automatically. But one thing about it does make your life a lot easier, and that's what's great about Copilot. Next, I'm going to have Jasmine kind of give you an idea and show you how you can use Copilot as a sales trainer and actually see how Copilot makes your life a lot easier. Jasmine?
Awesome. Thank you. So as Thomas mentioned, my name is Jasmine Hook. I am a senior technical specialist here at Microsoft. I've been here for about 3 years now, and I specialize in Copilot, productivity, all kinds of great stuff. I come from a background of program management and change management. So I try to weave in aspects of that into the conversations that I have with customers as well as with internal teams about how they can get their, get their work done more efficiently. And so I'm really excited to talk to you guys. Coming, from a perspective of a sales trainer, being in the sales team, there's a lot of things that we have to do. Not just about staying up to date on technology, but also staying up to date on who our competitors are. And in this instance, as a sales trainer, you have to think about not only the technology, but also the people that are going to be selling the technology. So a lot of times you need to use data to understand what it is that your users need. So with that being said, I'm going to start sharing my screen. And this is one prompt that I like to start, kind of like start across the board with, anytime you kind of like start your day. And the reason why I like to use this prompt is because regardless of what role you're in, you either have a lot of communications that you need to catch up on. And as Thomas said earlier, one of the things that's really key to him is just making sure that he can catch up on that. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm actually do a new chat. Kind of saw the end result. And so like a number of you guys, I start my day within Teams. And within Teams, I can do research across my emails, across my chat, across my documents to get my day started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this prompt in. You may or may not have seen this prompt before, but essentially this prompt will give me a nice summary of things that I need to work on, follow up on, any action items I need to do or take care of. And that way that kind of helps me prioritize what I'm going to do for the day. And so from a sales training perspective, this is where I would like try to identify content that may revolve around training topics. And the good thing is about that is I can actually prompt Copilot to specifically about that. In this instance, I'm just asking it for a summary, and then it'll go through, give me kind of like things that I need to know, things I've asked for, action items, things I need to do. This one in particular is really interesting. It talks about Chat GPT and what I should think about Chat GPT, some other content that is relevant to me. So these are kind of things I need to follow up on, action items, and then there's references to them. You see these little 9, I can just jump right to that content. And so with that being said, I need to start working on some of the information that I have here. And so let's just say in this instance, as a sales trainer, I need to start looking at developing a training program for our sales team. With that being said, a lot of times you want to start first with understanding what the needs are for our team. And so for that, I'm actually going to create a quick survey. So for those of us here, I'm going to actually create a quick survey, and I'm going to let Copilot help me with that. You may have also noticed right here, there's also the ability to create quizzes here. So if I wanted to create a quiz quickly, I could do that too as part of that training program. But in this instance, I'm going to ask Copilot to draft a survey for me based off of a special training session that we hosted for our team. Based off of the information that I get from that survey across the team, then I'll use that information to then create additional training. Once more, using data to help with that training aspect. But first, I need to collect the data in some instances. So not only do I have the data from maybe completing the training, but now I need to get that feedback. So as you can see, it drafts the training survey for me. Of course, I'm going to go through and touch this up. As was mentioned earlier, it's called Copilot, not autopilot. So it still requires an aspect of a human touch to go in and just make sure things are what your organization needs. But as you can say, it gives it a nice layout. If I want to make changes or add to it, I can do so. I can keep it. And as you can see, for those of us that have to create these surveys, you know how long it may take to do this, especially in trying to determine like what goes into here. And you'll also notice a quick little Copilot button here, so I can rewrite it if I want to, and maybe give it some additional parameters, and then gives me different examples of how I might want to phrase this. So that's the first thing I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start with getting that survey and collecting that feedback. So next, I'm gonna actually take you to the survey data. Now, this is not the exact survey, it's just a show, but after you've completed the survey, after our our team has completed the survey, I now want to take a look at that and then start maybe querying that data. And for that, I need to go into Excel. So for all of us here, I'm sure we use Excel in some way, shape, or form. And so the cell data that I'm going to show you is actually is a mixture of a couple of things. You'll see names. It's a mixture of like employee data as well as their sales numbers, as well as their training scores. So I want to essentially close that. I want to essentially do some kind of research on based off of their sales numbers and their training scores on specific products, what does that look like? Kind of get an idea of what's happening here and based off of the data. Once more, based off of some of those training items. So in this instance, I'm going to open up my document. I'm going to, and you'll notice it has a little bit of demographic information here as well. So make sure, like I said, the employee data. Not all organizations may have this, but in this instance, I just happen to have it together. So in this instance, one of the great things you could do right out the box is you could have Copilot just show some data insights. Give me an idea of what's happening, or show a suggestion for a formula. I like this column because sometimes there may be, I'm looking at the data and I'm like, okay, this is good because this is information that we've collected, things that I need to know. But sometimes there may be some additional insights or there may be additional data points that I hadn't thought about. And so this is where I ask Copilot to kind of help me out in this instance. So for example, this will show me, it's giving me sales growth. And this is giving me sales growth between 2022 and 2024. If I want to insert it, notice I can just highlight this insert column and you'll see the sales data kind of come in this in column right here. And I can get an idea of what's happening, between the how it's grown or maybe not. So in this instance, I'm gonna say, yeah, let's add the sales data. And I noticed that in terms of growth, maybe I want to see if there's anything related to sales growth and products. So what are the, let's say, products that didn't grow as much? Let's see this. This is actually not part of the demo, but I'm like, it just made me curious. I'm like, yeah, let's ask that question. Because for me, I'm like, okay, if based off of this sales data, which product maybe might not be growing as much, maybe is a training information. Okay, saying I need a little more. Okay, so maybe I need to change this a little bit. Let me rephrase this. Let's do that. Now, I will say with all things, we are doing a live demo. And of course, with live demos, sometimes they give me a hard time like it is right now when I'm trying to ask questions. So please forgive it. What's more is called Copilot or not Autopilot. We're still in preview. So let me ask it one more question and see if it'll do it for me. But of course, when I'm doing live things, it won't do it. Or actually, let me do another one. Let me just ask it to show me that data insights. That'd be a little better. Always, always something when you're doing a live demo. Sorry about that. And it's still giving me a hard time. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to come back here because I want to definitely show you this feature. And for some reason, it's giving me a hard time. But for now, I'm just going to take this based off of the sales growth. Or actually, I'm going to highlight a couple of things. Right. In this instance, I wanted to highlight any sales data or sales growth that's below 10%, just to kind of have it jump out a little more to me. And as it's doing that, as it's doing its thing, I want to show you how we're going to take this data. Let's say, for example, in this instance, when we're looking at it says, can you help me highlight something? Oh, sales growth column. Notice how it said, I need some clarity. Could you specify the column name or number? I like that it's being very polite. It's still asking me questions. So let me do it this way. No, let's see. There we go. I want to at least show out how we can pull this content, highlight this content out. As it's doing that, we're going to say we're going to take this data and then we're going to essentially create a sales for or start doing some brainstorming around what that would look like. Okay, awesome. Say apply the filter. Okay, apply it. Thank you. There you go. Okay, thanks. So in this instance, I'm going to clear that filter because I still want to see the data. I'm going to show you how you can then now do some brainstorming, let's say based off of this data. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go back here. And you may or may not be familiar with this, but we have whiteboard. So if you think about your standard whiteboard and you're doing a brainstorming session, whether you're doing a brainstorming session with your team or you're doing a brainstorming session, just kind of like trying to think about different things that you want to do or accomplish within your team. Or even just personally, you could come here and do that. As you can see, I do a lot of brainstorming across different things. But in this instance, I'll need to suggest different ways to improve our training for a particular product. So in this instance, I'm going to do this, have a prompt, suggest ways to optimize content for our training teams based on new product launches and stagnant products. What this will do is it'll give me a nice preview of different suggestions. And so as you can say, kind of like built 6 suggestions. So maybe I want to generate some more. And before you could only generate up to 18, that's been increased. So now I can generate more and more types of suggestions. So think about this. If you were in a team of persons, I'm going to generate one more time, a team of persons, and you're like trying to figure out how can you come up with different ideas and then pop it. You can pop that right in. As you can see, I'm going to keep this. It's giving me multiple suggestions of how I can essentially improve the training or come up with training suggestions. Now, imagine if you were a whole team that was engaged in this kind of activity, you have people putting content all over the place, some here, some there, like let's say it's like a mixture of stuff all over the place. And then you may have different colors, like maybe this is red, maybe this one is green or teal in this instance. So you may have a number of ideas spread out across this whiteboard. But typically what we need to do is we need to organize this, categorize this content so then we can prioritize what kind of suggestions we're going to go with. So in this instance, I'm going to go to Copilot again, and I'm going to ask it to categorize. So it's going to select the area that I would like. I'm going to say, yep. So categorize this. And then after it categorizes this information, I'm going to, as a team, we may have, if not, we may start, let me keep this, essentially gives us a little bit of affinity diagram of some sort. And then we might want to vote on it. So let's vote and say, okay, what do we like? What is maybe we got to think about this one. This will, or maybe put some votes on it. How many hearts do we put on it? That will tell us the priority in which we need to go with this particular idea. And so after we do that, we may want to do one of two things. Well, first off, what we typically want to do is we want to then send the results of our brainstorming session either to the team, to our stakeholders, maybe even to our content developers that may be helping us to create the training that we're going to eventually create for our organization, or even to leadership to give them an idea of what our results were. So in this instance, I'm going to come back to Copilot again, and I'm going to ask it to summarize. And I'm sure we've all been in those situations where we've been in a whiteboarding session, whether it was a online or an in-person whiteboarding session, and we had to like do a summary and then send that information off to our off to our team. But sometimes it can take a while. If it doesn't take a couple of hours, sometimes it can take days. Sometimes it can even take weeks, depending on what your workload looks like. Maybe you have multiple sessions like this going on, and it's just a lot of information, a lot of content. So in this instance, it's already given me the summary. Of course, I can add some additional colorful commentary. I'm gonna keep this for now. Additional colorful commentary to the content, maybe make some adjustments. But in this instance, this puts it in what we like to call a loop. And so this is essentially a living component. And so with that, I'm going to take this into Outlook. So I need to take this content and I need to create an email for this particular session. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to have to like type everything up. So what and maybe I might make some changes. So in this instance, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to put a subject, this work session. Send that off. I'm actually going to send it to Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. And then I'm going to have Copilot also draft an email. Just let the team know that we completed session. I'll schedule a follow-up meeting with next steps. And use emojis and give it a happy and excited tone. Kind of want to specify a tone. I'm just specifying it here, but you can also specify it here, what kind of tone you want to give as well. So in this instance, I'll just have Copilot do the draft for me. And I tend to like to use Copilot first before I pop anything else into my email, just to see what it looks like. Also, thank you for your hard work and enthusiasm. You rock. Oh, and use some emojis. I think I'm just going to keep this. We did it. Oh, that sounds just like me. Okay, let's keep that. And then I'm going to drop in the loop that we did for this. So one of the beauties of this is, as you can see, there's this little icon here that means that there's somebody in there. But let's say, for example, I send this email off and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to touch this up again. Maybe for some reason I didn't, somebody else came in later on and captured it and I didn't have this. So I make some adjustments. So in this instance, I'm saying additional participant. I say this is a Thomas C. As you can see, it is live and it is updated here. So that way I don't have to remember all the different places that I may have this component saved in and go or update it in maybe a spreadsheet, update in a document or update it here. I could just update it in one place and it updates across the board. So I'm just going to send that off. Thomas, you should be getting that in your email. But that's one of the great things about leveraging Copilot in this way, especially from a whiteboarding perspective. It is hands down fantastic, especially when you're creating different types of trainings and you're trying to identify ideas. One other thing you can think about too is, for in this instance, it asks about implement diverse case studies. I think this is a pretty interesting idea in itself, but sometimes I need to find those I need to actually find those case studies, obviously. But there may be a couple of things I want to suggest. So how do I implement these things? So once more, I can go to my suggest based off a specific topic. So this is how you can expand your brainstorming session and build on top of what you already have. So in this instance, I'm going to ask you to give me some additional feedback in this for this particular training that I might need to do. So in this instance, it's giving me some suggestions for how I can implement some diverse case studies. So once more, I'm now building on what I've already done. But in that instance, this is where I may come to my Copilot for the web. Now notice I'm still in whiteboard. I'm not really switching context, but I just popped open my Copilot button within my browser. Now you can still do this. Maybe if you use it within your teams, or maybe you want to open up a separate tab in your browser. I just tend to use the Copilot button on the side because that way I can see what I'm working on, and then I can still ask questions of Copilot. So in this instance, I want to ask Copilot about case studies revolving around sales training and improvement. So I needed to find those case studies for me. I said, fine, find me 3 case studies about improving, or let's say sales training methodologies, especially around competitors' products. For all of us that know here, especially from a sales perspective, you have to prepare your team for competitor products. How do they respond when they get asked questions about what are your competitors doing out there, and how can we and what makes you different from them? And so in this instance, it's pulled up 3 different case studies for me, as well as the references to them. Essential Guide, value-based sales training, which I really like actually. Understanding the challenger sales method, and then complete guide to sales methodology. So I can then go to these different case studies, and then leverage that as part of the conversation that I'm going to have later on with my team. So for that, I'm actually going to go into into Outlook. And remember that email that I sent to Thomas earlier? Now I want to schedule that meeting. Oh, this is a nice one you just add. I'm sorry, just gonna call him. I'm going to actually schedule this with Copilot. This, I will say, is one of my favorite new features within Copilot or within Outlook, because I create a lot of meetings. And when I create so many meetings, I love to have agendas, and I'm sure some of you may have had those meetings where you receive the meeting and there's no agenda. I don't know about you, but that stresses me out just a little bit. So I'm like, what are we talking about here? Yes, you have a title, but I really don't know what we're doing here. So in this instance, notice it's called Next Steps Post Whiteboard Session, which is fantastic because that's actually what it is. It gives me an agenda. It gives me a summary of what the conversation was previously. So in this instance, and it also attaches the actual email. So in this instance, I'm gonna hit insert. It gives me a couple of suggestions. Now this is within the new Outlook. If you haven't started using, please do so. I haven't gone back to classic Outlook for a while. I like the kind of like look and feels, makes it easier for me to like schedule meetings with team members. But as you can see, I can kind of like go through and schedule that meeting. I'm not going to schedule here because I'm going on vacation in a relatively quick soon time. So I'm gonna discard that for now. And now, as you can see, you can just kind of do that with Copilot. So with that being said, I'm going to switch just a little bit, and I'm going to show you how you can leverage other aspects of Copilot after you've done your research, kind of had these conversations. Now we need to maybe do some additional research, maybe look at some YouTube videos. I'm actually going to take you over to YouTube, and I'm going to create a new chat. So this is maybe one of the content, one of the places that I'm going to leverage content for our training session. And I can, in that instance, we don't necessarily have a lot of time maybe to look at a video. So I'm going to generate video highlights, which is super helpful, especially when you have a lot of video content that you may have access to. So in this instance, I just hit generate video content. Once more, I'm just in my Copilot chat on the side. And as you can see, it's going through, it's giving me those video highlights, that video content. And as it goes through that, I can, once it's finished, and it also gives me these nice little timestamps. Sometimes videos have timestamps, sometimes they do not, which of course can be pretty stressful. So in this instance, I can select where I want to jump to. Notice it will jump to those different sections within it, which makes it really helpful for me to get information that I will need to build the content. So after that, we're going to go to a meeting that we have. We already scheduled the meeting. I scheduled the meeting with Thomas. we've had the meeting, and now I've had a meeting about some additional content that I might need to use to help my team with their training needs. So in this instance, I'm going to go to this particular meeting, and I just want to show you really quickly how you can leverage Copilot. As you can see, it gives me my meeting notes, gives me the summary. This is a special model that's specific to Gen AI that I might want to pull some content from. As you can see, it has content that's related to it. Let me go back, open that content per se. But one of the great things that you can do once more is you can summarize content. You'll notice that I've queried this content quite a few times. I have a question that I typically like to ask, which is what kind of questions can I ask of this meeting? Ask the question, it takes me to the different places within the video or within the training recording that I can just jump to. And then of course I can ask some additional questions. So in this instance, I want to ask, what are some of the key concepts? Because these key concepts are things that I need to bring out for my training. So in this instance, I'm going to let it kind of do its thing. And then you'll see that you can essentially, this is where you're kind of gathering information from different sources that you'll eventually put in your training. So first we had the data from our team. We had the survey from our team. We had the data from that team, even though for some reason my Excel was giving me a little problem. I'm sorry about that. In the future, I'll make sure that we have a nice recording for you to see how it works. I don't know today, it's just giving me a hard time. If that happens, sometimes you just close it out, open it up, it'll be fine. Or you just give it a little bit of time and it'll work itself out. As you can see, it kind of gives me those nice contexts in this instance. Additionally, you also notice how I did some research from additional sources, such as maybe YouTube or some other video content. I can do the same thing with our internal content, leveraging Copilot. And then, of course, you can see within the meetings themselves. So now that I've done that, I've gotten my different data sets, I've gotten some different key points. Now I need to actually start building some of this content. So for that, I'm actually going to start within Word. So I'm going to go to word.new. For those who may or may not know, if you type in word.new, ppt.new, or excel.new, it'll automatically create a new document in the browser for you. And so in this instance, there's a couple of things. So whenever we're building learning, we have to have like goals, like what are the learning outcomes that we need to have for our team. So in this instance, I'm going to ask Copilot to create those learning outcomes based off of what our trainings are. Now, this will be a pretty generic because we are talking about from a training perspective, but it does revolve around the pharma space. So, or in this instance, maybe it's even from our go-to-market strategy. How can I help my team when it comes to that go-to-market? Or or we can ask it a similar question of, based off of the special training series that we held. So in this instance, I'm going to ask it, create learning goals. Well, essentially outcomes for an upcoming and there's a timeline. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can reference additional content in this for this particular example. For right now, I'm just going to leave it as is. But let's say, for example, we have specific content on a product. We can reference that product's documentation. For example, if there's content that's already been developed, let's say by our marketing team, we want to reference the marketing team's product information so that we can incorporate that as part of the training process for our sales team. But as you can see, it's giving me a nice introduction. It's giving me some learning goals and outcomes. For a new product, this is what it is. By the ending of the training, learner should be able to do blah, 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 blah. Describe XYZ. Awesome. I love it. I probably should have said, give me not so many, but it's good. So then it also gave me a nice timeline. This is quite nice by quarter 2. Start date, task, start, end date, duration, instructional design. Awesome. Fantastic. I love it. So I'm going to keep this for now. So after I've created this, notice that it's kind of giving me a nice title. Once it's created in the browser, it'll also automatically save to your OneDrive. But I think this is pretty nice. Maybe I want to tweak this a little bit. I think that it's important to not only have the, some of these timelines, like, but is this really realistic based off our team, based off our product launch? It's giving me a nice suggestion, but I just want to make sure that it is in alignment with what our organization needs. And maybe this is too soon because it's starting this month. I'm like, wait a minute, June 1st, that was a couple days ago. Maybe I need to change that. So once more, you just want to trust, but you want to verify. Additionally, you may want to change a couple of things in here. So for example, while I do like this, maybe I want to put it in, visualize this as a table, or maybe I would like to rewrite this. I can do that by just highlighting this. Or if I want to add some additional content, for example, I would like to add, can you add session, what do you say, session content that will, um, let's say content based on different generation within the organization, such as um, uh, boomer or baby boomers, to be specific, baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. Because everybody doesn't respond the same way to content. Maybe they need a different learning styles. Okay, so it's giving me session content, blah, 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 describe the current values. Okay, describe blah, 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 blah. Okay, so taking this into consideration, I will need to think about how I can think about these different generations and how I can bring in content that will still be will be relevant to each of these. So I keep that in mind. Awesome. But as you can see, you can just add on to that. And then maybe I might want to change it. Let's see, can we put this in a table? Might change it into table. But I digress. So I'm going to leave that here. Now, based off of the learning content, maybe I'm going to bring some other resources that I have across the organization. I'm going to create a PowerPoint from that. So ppt.new. Also, I might want to take some of my competitors' content and bring that also into the training that I may have set up for my organization. So in this instance, I'm gonna go to Copilot, and I can do one of two things. I can either tell Copilot to build a training for XYZ. Or I can tell it to build a training based off a file. I like to tell it to build a training based off a file. And I find that but having it based off of a file, it's a little more detailed because at the end of the day, Copilot tends to do things that are like, just high level, put it in there and then keep it moving. In this instance, I want it to be a little more detailed. And so, oh, it didn't finish long, guys. Let it kind of like go through it. I think this is the one I just did. It's not ready yet. So notice I just created this particular file. So sometimes it takes about 10-15 minutes for it to be able to be pulled from somewhere else. So in this instance, I'm actually going to create one from another presentation. Let's see. Actually, let's do that. Pull it from there. This is a new product, so actually this is free. Can't do that yet. Okay, so it's telling me no, it doesn't, can't do it. Of course, during my presentation. Ay, ay. Always when I'm like signing up. So once more, with all things, trust but verify. One of the things that you'll see that it will do is it will give you a nice outline of the content that is going to develop. In addition to that, I'll give you kind of like an idea of like the how long, what percentage it is. But once it's completed, it will also give you speaker notes. So I'm not sure about you, but let's say, for example, especially from a sales perspective, maybe you create different scripts for your team. Let's say, for example, before they get in front of a specific um, uh, customer, you may want to create a script that they're going to talk about or talk through, or especially when it comes to different products. So you can do that here. So as you can see, it created the content for me in a nice look and feel. You can change this by going into designer and then like changing the look and feel. Maybe you want to make it more engaging. Maybe you want to add a couple of um, additional content. In this instance, it created a smart art. If I want to change this, I can go in and just make the changes as I see fit. But those are some of the things that you can just do. So just kind of, I know we have about 15 minutes left, and I want to give some time for us to go into some of into our other places within our slides. But just as a recap, a couple of things that we were able to do is we're able to create a form or create a survey data or create a form within forms or to collect feedback on a training that we had. Based off of the data in that training, we can then align that with other training data or just use that training data to create idea or get an idea for what we need to do next for our organization. So for our teams. So in essence, make that data-based decision making on what kind of training we need to have. Additionally, we can align that with our sales numbers, or we can align that with the training that was completed and how what that response looks like for the team. And then we can get some suggestions. Well, how do we improve this? That's where we went into whiteboard to kind of do some whiteboarding. After that, we took that and put that into an email, sent that email off, as well as the summary for what we completed in our whiteboarding session. Follow that up with another meeting. This is just kind of the flow up that we have. Follow that with another meeting, do the summarization, collect information from different sources for the training, create an outline as well as learning outcomes for the training for our teams. And then from that training, then we can create the content. Now I create this content in PowerPoint, but of course, if you have other resources or other tools that you want to do, you can do that. Or you use PowerPoint for if you're going to do maybe a video of some sort, use PowerPoint maybe for your I don't want to call it whiteboarding, but for your storylining as to how you're going to create that video. So those are just a few things. I didn't even go over how you could use OneDrive or OneNote. There's so much here, especially if you want to compare documents, you can do that within OneDrive, and that'll be for another time. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Thomas. Actually, if you can share
Sure,
the deck again.
I can do that. Do you want to get into prompting?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. Let me know when you say it. You can definitely tell this is live. Nothing cooperates.
Always.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, of course, it didn't go to the right spot, but we'll get there.
It's fine. I'm gonna ask to take control really quickly,
Go ahead.
and then I'll jump really quickly to the prompting. So these are just some tips from a prompting perspective. We will send this slide deck out to you guys later on, but these are just some tips when it comes to prompting. This is essentially the art and the science, things you can do. So first you want to think about is you tell Copilot what you need. So you want to learn about projects. What is Project X and who are the key stakeholders? Transform documents, transform this FAQ into a 10-slide onboarding guide. This is pretty impactful. You can summarize information. You can create a course content, catch up on missed items. Additionally, you want to include the right prompt and ingredients. So kind of like, here's your goal. What's the context? Where are you getting that from? And then your expectations. How do you want it to look and feel? This is really nice. It's very simple, kind of like job aid that you can leverage for yourself or even for your team. Additionally, What other things do you want to do? Gain insights, some helpful tips. Recognizing that, you know, I like this one, no Copilot's limitations, as well as communicate clearly. So think about it as it's your helper, or think about it as your intern, or think about it as your assistants. It's not perfect. So there are, as you could see, I had some snafus going here and there. I was like, I don't know, of course, when I'm doing demo live, that's what happens. But I wanted you to see that this is really kind of like our everyday life, how we go through and we get work done. But communicate clearly. If you ask somebody questions like do XYZ, but you don't give context, you don't necessarily give any details about how you want it done, then you're going to get what you get. And that happens with just with people in general. So same thing with Copilot, communicate it clearly. I love that it says be professional. So be kind, use polite language as needed. Additionally, leverage the Copilot lab. If you haven't already gotten Copilot, leverage that lab. Here's some suggestions for, it gives you suggestions for products directly. As I mentioned, I didn't even go over all the products. I just went over some of them within M365 from a sales training perspective within this space. So think about it from the need of, I need to use maybe a particular product, or I'm always in Word, I'm always in Excel, I'm always in PowerPoint, or I'm in OneNote. How do I use Copilot within those things? And you can do that within Copilot Lab. Additionally, we have a couple of day in the life slides in here, which kind of walks you through how you can use Copilot. In this instance, it's specific to a pharma sales rep, but how would they use Copilot? And this could also be part of that training experience. Additionally, we have some on brainstorming, communicating, collecting, and sharing feedback. What does that look like? As well as some additional resources. Stay tuned for our upcoming webinar, which is June 17th, which focuses on clinical trials and clinical trials manager and researcher. Here's some additional things that you might want to do if you want to go to next step. So we have our Q&A. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. We have a few.
Okay.
Our first question is by, I think it was Stephanie Robinson. She had a question about, when we were actually doing the prompts and we got to say we don't have enough information, and it kind of like kept arguing with you, like I don't have enough information.
Yeah.
She just wants to know exactly what caused that. I have an opinion, but I'll let you do your opinion first.
Okay. So I feel like you saw that I got that. I was like, wait a minute, I know you know this. So sometimes I think it's just maybe the time of day, and it's just saying like, I need more information. It doesn't always need more information, or in some instances it does need more information. So maybe you might want to change the context of your question, or maybe you want to reference some additional material for your within your question. But in some instances, I need to refresh my screen or refresh my like in that instance, it was within Excel. Sometimes needs to refresh it. Also, I found that when I have circular references within my, like sometimes Excel say, you got circular references in here, you need to clean that up. I found when I cleaned that up, that was also helpful for it.
Yeah, I know for my opinion, sometimes, we work with preview versions of Copilot. So some of those feature sets are not there yet. So sometimes that's the kind of limitation. And also sometimes it's too complex. Sometimes if you take something that's really complex, if you just kind of break it down to smaller tasks, it can actually do the work for you. That's what I've seen when I've run into that prompt. Okay, second question we have is from Taylor. I don't want to mispronounce your last name, but she says complex clinical technical content creation, adherence to regulatory standards are top of mind for MedTech Pharma Sales Trainer. Are there specific ways that Copilot can accelerate that?
Yes. So my biggest thing, so with all of those regulatory standards, the first thing you need to do, and I think I showed this in terms of, is doing your research. First, you got to know what they are. So you can leverage Copilot to grab case studies, even an internal documentation that you may have on that. You can have Copilot reference that information and then build the content based off of that information. So I think if I broke it up into two different sections, it would be the research first, and then compiling that research into a digestible space. Like, for example, I would take, let's say, for example, there's a new regulation that that is well, it's not a regulation yet. It's a rule that will be coming out, or it's been presented. Let me pull it up. I didn't get a chance to show this because of the timing. But this one is a rule that's coming out soon. Mandated discharge summary, like components for accurate care. So in this instance, what I would do, actually, this isn't the one that I was looking for, but I'll just use this as an example. What I would then do is I would generate a summary for this particular document, or I would pull out the key themes for this document, or I would have this document be referenced. I would have Word take this document and then convert it into like a training material. So let me see, do we have 5 minutes left? Let me see, I can do it in 5 minutes. While you're doing it, can you ask the next question for me?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Is there only a web version and not the desktop version? So things that we're looking at, they want to know if it's all in web or it
You
can
can
be
do
in
it in the
desktop.
desktop as well.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just used to doing the web, that's all.
yeah. The second question, I guess the second question is also like everything that you're doing, are all those features available in Copilot?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
everything I'm doing is Copilot. This is all things that can be done today. Yep. If you
Okay,
see
I think,
preview, then you have preview.
okay. Delphine Walter, so I hope I didn't mispronounce it. She wants to know if it was a PDF as requested, why didn't it work? I'm not sure
I'm
exactly what
sorry,
that
which
is.
one?
I knew you
Like
can save a
here?
PDF as a PowerPoint.
Oh, within PowerPoint. Um, so that could be a feature that just hasn't been enabled yet. That is a future roadmap item. And I just might like the fact that it even let me reference it, I was really surprised. So that's why I tried it. But that's actually a roadmap item, and you'll be able to do PDFs in the future.
Okay. Okay. And we have a question from Martin, and Martin wants to know that just to summarize, he wants to know if Copilot can read the chat within the Teams meeting because he had a
Yes.
just kind of summarize. They were trying to do like a contest, and there was a winner and had correct answers in
Mhm.
the shared PowerPoint. They want to know, can you use Copilot to read chat to see who won a contest per se?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I'm trying to
Like
figure out
for
why it didn't work. Okay.
so if you go into there's the Copilot, so there's the chat. So let's say this is a meeting. There's the Copilot that's in the chat. Now this one doesn't have too much conversation in it. Let's go here. If I go to this one per se, and then I go to Copilot, then I can get summary. I can ask it questions within the chat. So I just wanted to share this with you. So I'm going to edit this. This was the prompt that I used. So create training content and outcomes based on this new regulation. So this is a new regulation advances that I just kind of like pulled. And what I did first actually is um you can see that it's actually a doc. It says PDF, but this one in particular is a doc. What I tend to do if I have it as a PDF, I might convert it to a Word document first, because right now I can't pull the PDF yet. However, once I can, then you can just do the same thing. But as you can see, it built the introduction, it has my learning outcomes, and built my training content, what modules would I use, and then an evaluation, what does that evaluation look like? And this is kind of like the high level, what that looks like. And then from there, I can, I just said it regenerate again. But from there, I can then take that content and build other content from it. So I can go like or expand on it. Or I can do some additional research and bring that research into it. But with all things, once more, you want to make sure you trust, but you just verify. Any other questions?
Yeah. I think that's a follow-up. Martin stated that the Copilot told me I don't have access to the chat. I know when I've seen that before is actually if I was like a guest in a meeting, I wouldn't have
Mm.
access to chat if it wasn't like in my tenant or if it's something a meeting that I didn't start. Is that
Within the share, oh, okay. So you said within the shared pilot, I can only use it. Okay. So I think what you're saying is the PowerPoint, it wasn't looking at the PowerPoint and looking at the chat.
No.
So what Copilot is looking at is looking only at the chat. It's not looking at the PowerPoint that's being shared.
Okay. Okay. All right. We have 1 minute left. We'd like to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you, Jasmine. You did a great job on your demo. Feel free to reach out to us, give us some feedback. Is there anything that you would like to see? We're always trying to create new content to make sure that you enjoy the power of Copilot. So, if there's none, Jasmine, any other alibis?
Now, what I would like to do, I want to put one video in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but this is actually a Copilot. This was presented during our build session last couple of weeks ago. And it's actually one of our larger pharma customers, Amgen. They were referenced in this video. Oh, actually, the chat's been turned off, so that's probably why. But I'll put it in the Q&A. But I'll put this in the video. So this is how Amgen used Copilot within their organization, and they have a very strong change management and adoption space in terms of like creating content, and learning was really big for their organization. So I'm just gonna put that in there for you guys to take a look at. It's a really great video, kind of like showing how they were able to leverage Copilot within their organization as a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Appreciate you.
Have a good one.
Later.